Peter, we were just talking, before we started rolling about your feature film career. You mentioned that this is your first film at Sundance.
Yes, for sure. I've done now like 3 or 4 features in America, and
Right.
sometimes the release of some films takes a long time. But this was like, we made this last year and it's here, and I'm very happy about it. It's fun to be here.
Yeah, so how was the experience for you, like getting onto the project? Like what made you take on this film?
Well, I really liked Josh Marston's previous work, like Maria Full of Grace was a huge hit in Europe, and it was an honor to even, have a Skype conversation with him. But basically my process starts from the script, so I was just super touched by the script and the fact that it's based on true events. I think that's where all my creative process starts from. The first time I read the script, and if it touches me and I get some tears in my eyes at some point, then I know that it's something that I want to do.
And did you go right into pre-production, or how did it work for Come Sunday?
Yeah, it was pretty quickly. We went to Atlanta and started location scouting, and that's something of my really I'm very passionate about finding good locations, and especially for this film, which happens a lot in, it's very important place is a mega church, but then it's like houses and offices. It's a little bit like, it's not very kind of cinematic places, and for me to find that place that really is easy to work with, and when you find the right place, it's easy to light. For the actors, they feel like it's the right place.
Yeah.
For everybody, it's super easy. So I'm really passionate about that phase of the filmmaking, and I think it's like in small budget films, it's really important and cheap way to raise the quality of the film.
Now, in this part of this process for pre-production, do you, find photographs of images you like? Do you do storyboards? Do you do lighting diagrams? What is it that how do you work?
Well, we started by watching a lot of footage, because they've been preparing for this film like many years. We had an amazing amount of archive footage of Carlton Pearson's real life. And there was just so much material, and it was so wonderful to, just watch hours of video material or watch photographs about his sermons, about his home. And we tried to make it as, real as possible. Like the home that we found, I think it's, when you look at the photos of his home from the 90s, it's very much the same.
Yeah, and looking at your work, I noticed that, you use anamorphics, stuff with flares. So you are trying to create, to me, characters with these lenses.
First of all, my approach is always I try to do as much as possible in camera. Like I'm not a big believer in VFX. I believe that there is like many creative ways to get rid of some of the VFX and do it in the camera if it's okay with the director and the vision of the film and the story. But yeah, I like to mix a lot of lenses. I like to use a lot of filtration. I like to create my own filtration. I've been working now 2 years with my buddies from Finland, creating my own lens set to my own needs, which didn't exist earlier, and that was also used in this film with big success, I think.
Oh, wonderful! That's really cool. So, do you find yourself, because you're from Scandinavia, do you operate or do you use operators?
Yeah, that has been a little bit difficult to find the true soulmate. Like I've been working with really great operators, but it doesn't change the fact that I'm a little bit uncomfortable always behind the monitor, because my background is so much in documentary.
Right.
So I always operate those. I always focus pull myself. I usually light myself the documentary work, and I still try to do that each year. To work on documentary to keep that hands-on experience. But for sure, like for my TV work and several camera work, I also enjoy being behind the monitor. And yeah, these days I've learned not to operate.
Speaking of your documentary work, I noticed it's very cinematic. So are you using prime lenses for a lot of that work?
Yes, always.
Always.
I'm not a big fan of zoom lenses. Of course, there is the places where you definitely need it, but for all my documentary work, almost since the red one came, I've used the super speeds, the high speed Mark II lenses, the 1.3 aperture lenses, and it's usually I have a bag in front of me, and I choose 3 lenses into that bag, and I change them myself, and I focus pull myself, and yeah, I think there is a big difference, and many of the documentaries I like to use as much as possible of available light, so the high-speed lenses that's the reason, and that's why I don't like the zoom so much, because I lose some stop.
Sure, of course, and the sharpness, of course, as well, a little
Yeah.
bit, yeah.
Yeah.
And then in terms of camera movement, notice that there's a lot of camera movement, even in your documentaries. So
Yes.
is that cognizant? Do you do this on purpose?
I think it's how I am. I think it's very much like I've done a lot of documentaries in places where I don't understand the language, so I have no idea what's happening. And also, like
Wow.
we did a documentary with my Iranian director friend in suburb of Sao Paulo, like in the poorest of the poor favelas, where we actually don't know what the basically from state point of view criminals are going to do next. So I had no idea, and it has to be very kind of not in the mind, it has to go with the emotions. And then I'm really surprised when I see the subtitles. Then I see that, okay, the camera went all right. So maybe I was lucky, but I have a feeling that there is some kind of emotional, thing that, is happening there between the camera and the subjects. And it's like, it's magical sometimes. I think it's magical.
And then how is it that you work with your actors or your, let's say, the subject matter of your docs? Do you like being wide and close to them, or are you more of a voyeur in that sense and backing off with the telephoto lens? Like, what do you prefer to do?
It really depends on the story, and I try to feel the characters and I try to get them to know them without the camera first. We did one like very special movie about children who were abused in childhood and were living in a foster home with no real parents, and I felt like I started very far, and then when I feel that it's okay to come closer, then I try to get as close as possible, because that's where the emotions are. You can't like the shots that you do with 25mm up close is just, it's such a emotional shot compared to following something with an 85mm. But it's all about the story and you feel, what is correct. And I think you have to be really sensitive as a cinematographer when you do documentaries too.
And so do you collaborate with your gaffer, your production designer, and everybody like in a fictional feature? Do you work with the team to kind of get what you need? How's that process?
Yeah, for sure. I think the most important person for me after the actors and the director is of course the production designer, and then comes gaffer. And it's always been a beautiful collaboration. Like I've never had a bad experience in feature film. It's always good. It's always kind of just a wonderful medium where people come together, and I think it becomes like at its best, it becomes like a child's play. Like we have super expensive toys, but we are kind of, creative children who are, and in pre-production process you are more kind of, just creatively exploring all the possibilities, and then the producers come and they say this is not possible, but we still have some of that play, left after that. And sometimes with my gaffers who I've been working with a little bit longer, we don't speak anymore. It's just we do the pre-production, but then we just laugh and we look at each other and we understand. It's just chill. It's an amazing thing to be in that spot, and it took many years. I don't mean that it's kind of comes naturally. It came to a lot of stress, and I was totally like a stressed student, and I didn't know that I'm any good. But then little by little, you start trusting, and I think that trust between people is what it's just wonderful to come together and make a film together.
Here's a crazy question: if you can pick your next dream project, like I've always wanted to shoot this kind of film, what would it be? What genre, what kind of film would it be as a cinematographer that you would really turn you on, that you would want to do?
Well, coming from Scandinavia, I always felt like why didn't they do any westerns in the snow? Like up there, and I would love to do a western. That would be really amazing.
Okay.
To do a real scope western, old style.
Yeah.
I'm totally open to any. I'm really interested in sci-fi also, and it's like it's a big palette, and I think it's been quite fun to jump from genre to genre, from black and white to really colorful stuff. And
cool, great. And where did you study film? In Finland, or?
I studied. There is a University of Industrial Design, and it's kind of our only film school. Film department was there, and they choose 2 DPs each year and 2 directors and 2 producers. So it was a very special kind of small film school.
Wow.
But unfortunately, I didn't have a cinematography teacher until the 3rd year. So I I studied editing, which has been a big help, you know, later on. Like I also edit it a lot, like when I do the documentaries in my mind. But then I had an amazing professor called Esa Vuorinen, like an amazing Finnish DP who is a big name, did a lot of work in Sweden also, and he was a big influence. And he then was smart enough to take us small boys to Kamerimais Festival in Poland, and we saw, you know, met Vilmos Sigmund and Laszlo Kovacs when we were super young, and attended their workshop, and suddenly, you know, our minds exploded, and we became like aware of the whole magic of what this world is.
Very nice. Well, thank you so much, Peter, for coming today. It's such a pleasure to have you, and I hope that it gets distribution and you find all the success that you want.
Yeah, it should. It has a very good cinematography.
Yes, that's right, it does.